I love football, but living in Japan turned my favorite sport into an endurance test. Sleep deprivation, no sports bars, and kids who kept thinking my football was a weird brown little rugby ball. Welcome to NFL life in Japan. Football in America isn't just a sport that you watch on Sunday. It's something you're raised on. Whether you have generations of your family that root for your city's team, hanging out with friends and going to watch parties on the weekend, or just eating at any restaurant that has a TV, football is always on, even when the season isn't. Entire seasons of the year are correlated to football season. Even the term football weather, referring to fall and winter. That feeling when you walk outside, you feel that autumn breeze, you see the fall leaves falling, and that sudden urge to run a dig route and jam your finger on a bullet pass from your friend who thinks he's Aaron Rodgers. Even those in America who don't even watch football or know anything about the sport have at least attended maybe a Super Bowl party or at least know who Tom Brady or Travis Kelce is. We got high school football on Friday, college football on Saturday, NFL football on Sunday, Monday, Thursday, fantasy football, Madden, and sports betting that takes over every other commercial. Entire restaurant economic models banking on Saturdays and Sunday afternoons. It's everywhere, and it's awesome. Buffalo wings, draft beer, tailgate barbecues, your lucky seat in the living room, the epic wins, the heart-wrenching losses. It's just football. And then you move to Japan, and the sport and the pastime that you grew up on, something that was such a big part of your life and about your country's culture and identity, is nowhere to be found. For the first time, you're in a country where your favorite sport is the minority sport, and no one watches nor cares about it. Let's break down what being an NFL fan in Japan is really like, and why football is at the bottom of the food chain in the land of the rising sun. Now, don't get things twisted. Japan loves its sports. If you know anything about Japanese sports, then you probably know about Japan's love for baseball, and how passionate that they are about the game, really even more than us in the US. It also loves its basketball and soccer, with professional teams and leagues in every area and city across Japan. However, American football never really got a chance to be quite ingrained in Japanese culture like, for example, baseball did. Baseball entered Japan in the 1870s, and it became deeply embedded in Japanese culture through schools and university games, professional leagues, and high school tournaments such as Koshien, which is so big in Japan it's kind of like the Japanese baseball equivalent of March Madness that we have in America. Soccer, similar to baseball, gained a lot of traction and popularity over the last few decades through school clubs and the launch of the J-League, and just like the rest of the world, just being a really easy sport to play. Football, however, came a lot later and is regarded as something that is extremely niche, only really played in a corporate semi-professional league called the X-League, and a few universities that might have a football program. Even still, there has been a growing population of semi-professional and college players, totaling around 20,000 players at all levels in Japan, which is actually a lot more than I thought, but it still is really small considering soccer has about 900,000 players in all levels across Japan. Football in Japan even has its own national championship game every year called the Rice Bowl, which is just amazing. Thanks, Japan. Never change. However, lately it did receive a surge in popularity for all the wrong reasons, as an illegal hit by a linebacker in one of these games did end up going viral and all over the news in Japan, and really raised questions if American football would actually have a future in Japan, just because of the danger and the brutality of the sport, which Japan is a very risk-averse culture. It's maybe just not something they're really into. And besides that incident, there's barely any form of American football in the Japanese news or media. Besides a manga that later became an anime called Eyeshield 21, that actually became one of the most popular sports manga of its time and is still highly regarded. However, it didn't inspire an entire generation of Japanese kids to pick up a helmet and pick up a football, unlike Slam Dunk and Haikyuu did for basketball and volleyball in Japan, respectively. Football just never really broke through. The NFL tried, kinda. They played a few preseason games in Tokyo in the early 2000s to kind of maybe get some momentum, get some traction for the sport. However, it never really took off, unlike how it is in Europe right now with the NFL is trying to expand into those markets. Japan and Asia is kind of a market that the NFL and American football has yet to really try hard to get into. So American football never really took off and is not really thought about or talked about at all in Japan. Now let's talk about my personal experiences being a football fan in Japan and how I was able to keep up with football season while living on the other side of the world. The first major hurdle is when to watch the games. A typical 1 p.m. Eastern Sunday kickoff is 2 or 3 a.m. JST, Monday morning in Japan, depending on America's daylight savings time. So this means if you want to be able to watch the game live, you have to not only sacrifice 4 hours of your sleep, but also get up for work the next day, which in my case was teaching 5 classes of English, and sometimes even having to do 200 to 300 speaking tests the next morning.
Hello, my name is Kaito. I wake up at 7:30 a.m. I eat rice and miso soup for breakfast. I go to school by bike.
Oh yeah, miso soup, yeah, really good, yeah. Thank you very much. Next. And that's just the typical 1 p.m. Eastern game. If you want to watch any of the other games, you're screwed, as 4:30 Eastern is 5:30 or 6:30 a.m. in Japan, meaning you might be able to watch the first half possibly before you get ready and go to work, in which you won't be able to watch the second half because you're at work. And if it's a night game, just forget about it. 8:30 p.m. Eastern is 9 or 10:30 a.m. JST, so your workday is going to completely take over that game. Now, in my case, rooting for the Jacksonville Jaguars, I actually was able to watch 2 of the Jags games in London, which was at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, which was about 10:30 or 11:30 p.m. in Japan. So I was actually able to watch that and kind of have that football night game experience. But I think I may have took it a little too far in celebrating those occasions before I had to get up early for work next day and teach classes.
Caleb, can you please read page 94 for the class slowly?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Kaito wakes up at 7:30 a.m. Kaito goes to school by bike.
My first year in Japan, I actually did this system of watching the games live, and it really took a toll on me. I even missed watching the Super Bowl. I had to check the scores of the game in between classes, which was just a weird feeling for me as it's the first time I've ever not watched the Super Bowl. After a while, I ended up changing my system to actually watching the replays of the game after work Monday afternoon instead of watching them live in order to keep my sleep schedule and my sanity during the football season, which actually turned into a pretty solid system for me, and I actually highly recommend people to do that. If you're living abroad, watch the replays instead of watching them live. I think it's just a better overall experience in order to best enjoy the games how they're meant to, with some food, with some drinks, in a relaxed atmosphere, instead of waking up at 3 a.m., barely awake, and being sleep deprived and groggy the entire rest of the day. It's even worse when they lose and then you're depressed the rest of the day and sleep deprived. So I just recommend wait till after the game. Unless there's some reason you have to watch the game live, just expect that you're going to need a lot of coffee the next morning. However, the one drawback to watching the replays Monday afternoon instead of watching it live was having to go full media blackout the next day, until I got home from work and was able to actually watch the games. However, naturally, a few of those times it did fail, unfortunately.
Alright, there's no checking the score. Got this. Huh? Son of a...
Now, not only do you have to worry about when to watch the games, also where and how do you even watch the games. In Japan, they don't just show all the NFL games live on every single sports channel, and there's no local sports bar that's going to be airing the games live or open at 3 a.m. At least not where I was living. Maybe if you live in Tokyo or Osaka, you might be lucky and find some kind of American sports pub that's open late that would show the games, but I haven't heard of anything like that. And up until recently, there wasn't actually any real way to watch the games. Thankfully, DAZN has partnered with the NFL to be able to stream the games internationally and be able to watch replays. So that's really your best bet and the one I recommend doing if you're watching the games abroad. But being loud and proud with your friends and family in the comfort of your own home, or maybe out at a sports bar, those days are over. This is how you will most likely be watching football from now on.
But Ken Lawrence get them into the end zone. Puts a nail under it. From side, he's got Thomas wide open. Thomas.
Woo.
Touchdown.
I want to show y'all something. This is Mr. Snowball. He is Japan's #1 Jags fan. Unfortunately, he melted 5 days later when the snow went away. He was also the only other person in Japan that shared his passion for American football, like I did. And he was the only community I had to share my love of football. Rest in peace, Mr. Snowball. Duval till we die. Now, I'm being dramatic, but I'm not joking when I said that there was no one else that I talked American football with while I lived in Japan, besides my family and my girlfriend over the phone back in the States. Which is so crazy to think about for me, because in America, we talk football. You're in the break room at work and you're talking to a couple guys. What are you guys talking about? You're talking about football. You meet a new friend. What are you talking about? You're talking about your favorite NFL team and your top 5 quarterback list. What do you know? You're talking about football. What's one of the only things you can comfortably talk to your father-in-law about without it being totally awkward? Football. Not only are the actual games such a big deal, but so much of what we consume in media and what we talk about in our daily conversations are around the sport. So living in a country that has none of that can be a pretty surreal experience. I guess what they call culture shock. You won't find people walking around in jerseys anywhere. You're not going to be finding advertisements, posters, billboards of your favorite teams and players. No Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid on every other State Farm commercial? Actually, that one was a blessing. Get used to your conversations and your love of football to yourself. Or try to find some niche community football fans in Japan if you can. Now, as an assistant language teacher on the Japanese exchange teaching program living in Japan, most of my job actually wasn't teaching English grammar, English vocabulary. It was actually showing Japanese children American culture and a little bit of where I came from. And just something different than what they're used to in normal Japanese daily life. Now, this is fun and all, but there was one aspect of American culture that they never really seemed to understand nor care about like I did. I'm sure you know where this is going. And that's a little bit of where I'm from. All right, thank you for listening. Does anyone have any questions? Oh, what sports do you like? Oh, that's a really good question. Actually, I want to show you what sport I like. Show you? This. Rugby ball! Oh, I know. It looks like a rugby ball, but this is a football. Rugby! I know, yes, looks like a rugby ball, yeah. Rugby ball! Oh, yes, I know, yes. Rugby and football are very similar, but there are differences. In rugby, you pass backwards. Backwards. You pass backwards. In football, you pass forwards. Pass forwards. Football. Does anyone want to try? Does anyone want to try? Huh? Rugby ball! Okay. Almost 3 years teaching English in Japan, and not once did any of my students really take an interest or care about anything about American football, no matter how many times I tried to show them or spark any interest in the sport. Which is totally fine, they don't have to like it, it's not their culture. It's just not what I'm used to coming from deep football country. However, I did tell them a lot about the Jacksonville Jaguars. And part of me just thinks it's really funny that there are hundreds of people in Shimane, Japan, that all they know about American football is the Jacksonville Jaguars, and that they're the best team in the NFL. Even with all the hardships and trying to keep up with the NFL season while living in Japan, I still had some fond memories. And funny enough, one of the best Jaguar seasons ever was actually while I was living and working there. And those were some great moments. Even if I could only really share those moments with my family and my girlfriend over the phone back home, they were still amazing. You can make it work, and you can still definitely have football and be a diehard fan in Japan. And it even makes you appreciate the sport even more and have it something that you embrace and you hold on to as part of your culture. For me, after an entire week of eating rice and ramen, it became a weekly ritual to grab some KFC or some konbini chicken and toss it in some Amazon shipped in buffalo sauce and dip it in some ranch that I had to make myself because they don't sell that in Japanese grocery stores. Add it with a Corona and a lime and get transported to an American wonderland right in my tiny Japanese apartment. And when I did return to America and got to experience NFL Sundays again, it made me appreciate so much I took for granted. Just to be able to flip the game on a Sunday or Saturday afternoon in the comfort of my home, or just be able to see a game on when you go out to eat or go to a restaurant, without the hassle of media blackouts and streaming buffering and destroying your sleep schedule. So yes, being a football fan in Japan sucks. However, it's up to you and your mindset to make the most of it, and bring your own slice of American football culture abroad. So if you're ever in Japan during the NFL season, just remember, you're gonna need coffee. Lots and lots of coffee. Alright guys, thanks for watching this video. Tune in next week for more Japan, Jags, or cocktails, sometimes all three. And if you're a fan of the Jacksonville Jaguars or NFL, catch my game recaps and reactions and my weekly previews of each game coming out weekly. And for those Japanese learners out there who need some more listening practice, check out my Friday Night Drinking Japanese podcast. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.